UMO Design presents.
I visited countries for long enough to learn language to say something meaningful in it.
Definitely the comes right out of Wikipedia.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 5th weekend of the Women in Design Fest. I, Natali Valsankar, and Tanmay will be your hosts for today. I am really delighted to have you all join us to listen right now and listen to our amazing speakers, and hope you have been enjoying the session so far. The Women in Design Fest is presented to you by the UMO Design Foundation, a non-profit that has been creating design awareness for over a decade through events, conferences, and design education. UMO is the force behind initiatives like the UX India Conference, the Women in Design Fest, and the UMO Design School, UX in Collaborative, and Design X Social. At UMO, our mission is to inspire and educate 1 million women to become designers by 2030. To take this forward, we aim to provide scholarships worth $150,000 to provide design education to women aspirants through the UMO Design School and make them employable in 2022. At the UMO Design School, we aspire to sponsor design education for students who possess the right aptitude but lack the financial ability. The courses in the industry are recognized and taught by some of the finest mentors and academic partners. We welcome you to be a part of the UMO Design family by supporting us as a partner, a mentor, or even a volunteer. This is our 15th year organizing the Women in Design Fest. Just like last year, we had 7 online sessions spread out over 7 weekends last year too. You can watch all of them from the last year and this year on the dashboard of your UMO account. Today is the 5th segment of the 7-week-long fest. We have so much more in store for you and today and for the coming weeks. So we hope you continue to join and support us. In today's session, you listen to some amazing women speakers from diverse backgrounds. I welcome our speakers, Kadambari, Yessie, Aishwarya, and Sudebi. Today's panel discussion will be moderated by Mansi, Salvi, and our panelists will discuss about work-life balance. Before we begin, I'd like to mention that you can post your questions for our speakers in the comment section during the talk and the panel discussion as well. We will get to them at the end of each talk and ask them to our speakers, so feel free to do so. It's now time to welcome our first speaker of the evening, Kadambari Sahu. She is the Senior Vice President for Design at Value Labs in Hyderabad, where she's an award-winning designer and design leader. She is also the founder and host of Design Inspire, an online series for young and aspiring designers. Today, she will be speaking about how design enables her to create seamless experiences across media devices, touchpoints, cultures, and geographies by breaking down barriers between physical, digital, and service design. So please welcome Kadambari.
Hi, Nitali. Thank you so much for the introduction. Today, I'm going to talk about a different topic, though. I'm going to talk and address about challenging stereotypes, some of the things that really steal away opportunities for a lot of people and people with different skill set. So here are some of my views and some of my work about challenging stereotypes. First, let's understand what is stereotype. So stereotypes are the idea that everyone within a certain group shares the same characteristics, irrespective of their individuality. The problem is that we don't function like that, right? And you can think about it, and many statements that you might have heard about these statements like women are or men are, let's say, or all Gujaratis are or all Marathis are, or in that case is some of the positive stereotypes as well, like Asians are very good at mathematics, let's say. All of these statements are actually stereotypes. And rightly you can point it out, they can be cultural, gender, age, all of these. uh, some of the research also shows the positive stereotypes like Asians are good at mathematics can also be harmful. So, stereotype, whether it is positive or negative, can be harmful because it sort of restricts our vision as to who we are or what we can or cannot do. But it is not just that simple. It's not just reduction or oversimplification of the idea. And that's why we need to challenge it. Let's talk about that, why we should challenge it. First of all, as I said, it is oversimplification. It is also reduction of somebody to just like, some characteristics or traits. This means that it is a loss of individuality. This can lead to a lot of discrimination. Discrimination, such as, let's talk about leadership, right? There are certain aspects of leadership that you would understand as how a leader should be. Many of the gender norms just work just against that. And that's a problem because what a mental model of a leader is, and if women are not following in that particular mold, that becomes a problem and that becomes hindrance in their career path. But not just women, it can be discrimination of any other ways. Let's say, talking about, just taking the same again statement, all Asians are good at mathematics, let's say. And then you don't understand that there might be some who might not be good at mathematics but might be creative. So these kind of things, and when these people apply for job and people say no, you might not be that fit for the role, that's a discrimination. It's also obstruction of their rights or what their vision would be as to what they are, right? But that doesn't end there. If this false stereotypes, they fell in the hands of wrong people, it can also be mass perpetrated and can result in a lot of bigger social problems like racism. You don't need another thing to call it bad. It is bad in its own self. Xenophobia, fear of the other because they're different and of different kind of people. Lack of diversity and inclusion in the society can lead to that. And this can also then be channelized to create violences against a certain ethnic group, a certain gender. All of those kind of things can happen. So that's why it's so important that we have to challenge it when we can. For today's talk, I'm going to focus some of my views and the way I am challenging it. I think we can challenge it through our work, through our attitude and practices. Also understand that biases plays a big role in stereotyping somebody or someone. I'm going to talk first about one of my award-winning projects, sniffing out the differences. This project was largely so successful because of two things. One, because it has a lot of difficult stories, social stories that it went on to articulate or communicate very easily, and with a lot of empathy. It was authentically represented. But the major other portion was that it was done through smells. It was olfactory interfaces, and that's why it was extremely novel in its way it was trying to do. But for today's talk, I'm not going to really delve into those parts, but really on the content or the research or how we portrayed those stories. First thing, when we were trying to look at these stories connected identity and our culture and heritage to a great extent. So when we were looking at Indian culture and we read a lot of books, it was most of them were from a foreign lens, from white male perspective, written to exotify India, which does not really went well with me. I was like, why are these people talking things like this in a certain manner, as if we so that kind of thing doesn't really gel well with, if you look at the history, how most of the natives or ethnic groups have been described. And that's a problem with anthropology. If you look at, there are a lot of critiques on this. At the same point of time, we were also very scared or very conscious in terms that we should not be doing that when we are trying to identify some of the characters or stories, or how we're going to portray them. So that portrayal had to be like really good, authentic, and something that is not exotified. So the first story that we went on to create was about identity stories. It looked at a lot of things. One of the biggest thing that it was trying to challenge was xenophobia, and how we were trying to do is by understanding what is our cultural identity. Today we live in certain area. We're born in certain place. We study somewhere else. All of these globe trotting, or even going to different regions and cultures. If you look at yourself, you would be amalgamation of a lot of cultures. So your cultural identity is not just in the culture that you were born in, but actually where you lived, how you interacted, and what you possess right now. So these are some of the cultural sort of traits and identity that I would say a person belongs to. And we also saw a lot of hate in India, as per, and even globally, where there were a lot of violence against immigrants, right? Um, so we were looking at those kind of stories, and we were trying to look at how simply we could talk about these. So we took an example, and very personal example, of a friend, Supriti, who used to reside, like, who was born in Somwarpet in Kurg, went on to study in Bangalore, then went in Bangalore and many other places. Currently, she stays and calls Hyderabad her home. And one of the things that in her story is reflected is she says that now I'm a software engineer. I'm good on my own, and now I would want to find my life partner. I'm settled now. Her In her own words, she says that I'm settled now, and now I want to find a partner. Things which, if we would have just imagined out of somebody, just writing a story, we would have dealt it in a very different way. So these gender stereotypes we did not use when we are trying to talk about our own culture and how people are. Um, so it sort of broke that mold as to how we look at life of people. It also broke that stereotype of how culturally people can be, what they can or they cannot be, and what they call home. The whole of these stories actually was very simple and very enjoyable, something you would find, and you would much relate to some of her things that she describes there. Her stories about coffee, growing up in Kurd, and going through various different stages where she laughs and cries and things like that. uh, Very much relatable, but brings home a very strong point on xenophobia and gender stereotypes, and something that we need to look at ourselves, that who we are. And if ever we think that another person should not be either in the country or the city, then why do we think so? So it gives a very subtle message there. The second installation that we had done in Sniffing Out the Differences was about Mir Abdul Attarwala. In this particular story, we were trying to talk about the war-torn region of Kashmir. And when you look at itself with places of this kind, where there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of conflicts, you would understand that there's a lot of emotions which are there that needs to be portrayed very well. One of our colleague went there, studied, stayed with them, understood the stories, created those stories in the form of poems, and had come back. Of course, it had a lot of big component of smell, which he brought with him, and then we had to manufacture in a certain way. But what really struck with us was the first poems that were written, and they were really something that can move you to tears. But as a group, we always validated that with people on whom we were writing, or whose experiences we were trying to portray. At this point of time, even if we would have taken that first draft of poem forward, our audience would have been moved much. But what we really wanted is authentic representation, and not some things which people would want to hear, or would, in a way, not for publicity, or not for some popularity or personal gains. So that's why we went ahead and went on to a draft. We lowered down the tone so much. We most of the time validated with the people whose experiences we were trying to narrate through these poems, and tone it down to a level where it felt authentic. At least there has to be a trying and research methodology. I think the exact opposite of xenophobia, or these biases and stereotypes, is research, where and you understand. So that's why research is so much important in any of the places where you would want to see authentic representations and good stories. The last, and the scale of what I've talked about, the discrimination to next level, which was racism, we wanted to talk about Jallianwala Bagh. It is our history, right? We know that independence, came through some of these really bad experiences that our countrymen, our people had, our folks had, and at that point of time, it was not really divided into India, Pakistan. It was like one place where we were people under Raj, if we can coin that, or we can say that way. So at Jallianwala Bagh, when you look at how a person can fire rounds of bullets on innocent people, children, and people with really who can't defend themselves, you try to understand that what they're trying to do here, or what at that point of time the psyche of the person would have been. So, not answering that first, but trying to understand that why Jallianwala Bagh and this particular installation was important. We were trying to unearth our own history, and that's why if you look at the particular site, it looks like bricks and all. It's almost like an archaeologic, where you're going, digging your past, and bringing these artifacts. This whole installation, in terms of interaction design, did not have dialogues. It was only sound and smell and artifacts that you could see and move to the story. The smell, of course, had a major role to play, from festive smells to this acidic smell of rotten people dying. Those were the sort of spectrum that you go from in this particular installation. But what really stood out most as trying to discriminate or is stripping of the personhood. It's only then you can fire these kind of things, bullets on unarmed people who are demonstrating peacefully. So it goes to a level where these discrimination, stereotypes, biases, they get to a point where you don't think the other person is a person. You just feel them as one particular, a group where you can you can use certain elements to use violence against them. And that's what Jallianwala Bagh should be taken as in the modern times, in the contemporary thought, that what can happen if you don't empathize with others, if we strip down people to a level where we don't consider them people, or persons, then what can happen? And these kind of violences can emerge, and that's why we should be very mindful and thoughtful about what's happening around globally. Next, I would want to talk and take a small break from the installations of one particular work that we generally do currently is UX, right? All of us, even that was UX, according to me, but taking generally some of the processes that we have, right? Persona. If you don't do proper research, if you have not really conducted and done an aggregation of the characteristics, what you really are doing is you're having figment of your imagination, and second thing that you're doing is you are stereotyping as a designer. Also, have you seen this thing where most of the users by few people would be called as him? Your user would be described as just him, and that's a big problem, right? In user experience, if you are designing for just one particular gender, then you are really committing a horrible mistake and horrible problem for creating a horrible problem for the 50% of the humanity, right? So we should question our biases when we are talking in a certain language, because language will also affect our psyche. How we talk about our users would really reflect in the work and the experiences and the product or services that we create. And that's why we should understand who are the users and try to be inclusive, try to create for all in that sense. And even when we are trying to create for that particular segment, try to understand whom are we designing for, what their gender would be. Are you trying to be inclusive or not? Are you excluding somebody, socially, even culturally, and ability wise? That's why I think accessibility is a big way to go forward. Do your testing properly. Icons, right? We think when we come from a certain cultural background that it is something that can be understood, but try and test it. For whom you're designing, is it culturally aligning? What does it mean? Some of the bigger problem is that when you don't create for inclusivity, when you're not thinking of these sort of thing, you end up creating a lot of problems. And these problems today, even if we take from the gender perspective, you will find a lot of material for cities for women and 99% invisible, just to contrast, where they're talking about a lot of gender related issues. I would not go in this talk about it, but something for you to read after, like, if you are interested. Taking this sort of thing now to another work of ours where we were trying to design for check in check out flow for a vehicle with this particular device here. The problem here was when we were doing these sort of stories, we understood that once when we played out the whole thing and it was voice enabled interactions, we did not found a lot of problem. But then we flipped the narrative and we made a person who's going to answer all of this as women. It's not that men don't have privacy issues, but when we just flipped the gender, we saw so many different concerns. Not only that, that just made us realize that how those interactions should be carried out. Rather than speaking most of your things onto a certain device, then we went on to create something which can be scanned. Of course, did not only sit well with these gender inclusivity, but if you look at some other aspects, like for example noise in the environment, this would be a second way. So modes were studied much well to make sure that it was inclusive in the interactivity and how we are sort of enabling people to do the same sort of things. Another thing that I want to talk today is about the attitudes. And you would sort of in your life, not only you will face it when you are trying to design something, but you would also face it in your professional life. And I think we all need to challenge the stereotypical attitudes, not just in others, but in ourselves also. I think the another thing that I always feel is that do we reflect on our own that what kind of attitudes or what sort of things we hold in our mind, and put that to question. It's extremely important to reflect, not only challenge others but ourselves, to see where and how we land. Now, some of the attitudes that I faced in early on were like, oh, Indians are generally engineers. Oh, you're a designer? I was like, yeah, I mean, yes, we supply a lot of engineers to the world, but it doesn't mean that a country can be restricted to a particular, sort of profession. Similarly, one of the other things that I saw in some of the fellow designers when I was at a certain conference, and sometimes I was speaking to them, and they would say, you know what, we can't be as great as them. And this, I call it colonized mindset, where this they were generally coming from more developed nations. I don't think as such this exists. And this I had to sort of break it down in many ways to make sure that it is not hampering either my team or sometimes myself. um, there was a time when a person directly told me that, no, I don't think that you can be as creative as European designers. I said, what? This is absolutely a big problem that you have. But coming rather than from an anger side, which of course I was very angry, I came from another side and I said, you're ignorant. Look at what work I do and things like that, and try to explain this person. But really, thankfully, at this point of time, this person was also engaged in a certain project with me, and we were able to create, and deliver. And the kind of appreciation and awards that we got for that particular project, this person came back and said that, I think I was really wrong in assessing you. I said, you cannot assess a person just based on where they come from. Look at them individually, and why do you have these kind of notions? So all of these are really 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 things that one needs to take care and detest, but at the same point of time, even if you're angry, make sure that it is coming from a place where you're trying to first think that the other person is ignorant and then try to educate them. I think that would be a good way to go about it. Another thing was, even for our professions, right? Thankfully now attitudes are changing in terms of how we look at designers and what they do. But earlier it was more of an aesthetic exercise, right? Designers make things beautiful. That's one of the statement that I got, and then I was like, thankfully now business value of design is much understood. But wherever there's design maturity is low, you will find these kind of things. But you should find some of the arguments to take this forward and not settle or not let anybody define what this profession should be if they are ignorant. The next thing that I would come to is women leaders. Either they're invisible, people can't see them, or they're diversity check. Are they? But these again should be changed. As I said, that through our work, through our attitudes and practices, we can look at these. Today, I see more and more women coming up and taking positions as leader. But do understand that in design industry, where 60-70% are actually women, how many women leaders are there? Very less. I think it's 3%, or even lesser than that, or that kind of equation it is. It's extremely alarming. um, you should also not take your age or experience, number of years of experience, as something which is sacrosanct. I think too young or too old, or only 15 years of experience, or 10 years of experience, or 5 years of experience is a bullshit. I think one needs to really challenge that what is asked, and what skill set do you bring. Are you able to take that position? Are you able to keep that work going? Are you able to motivate others? What is the job requirement, and what you are going to deliver? It should be on that. I think this can come externally or as well as internally. It can come to you thinking that, oh, I cannot go for this particular position because I'm too young. Or a person can say, hey, you were too young for a leadership position, right? But I think those are just biases that needs to be taken really very strongly. And that should not be something that can define either a person who's had that thoughts. But don't take it so seriously. Try to understand what are the objectives, and based on that, go ahead and try to see what we want to establish or become. And that's why in my team currently, you would never find number of years of experience taken sacrosanct. It is more towards taking into consideration that what skills you bring to the table, what your thought processes are. Finally, I would like to talk about one of the really amazing statement that was talked about, was written in one of the books by my mentor. And it said that beyond the design of artifact or services to solve problem, to design is to be able to give voice to people, often the poor, the marginalized. To design is to be able to construct futures that restore dignity and nurture people's aspiration. I don't think anybody could have summed up the responsibility of design or designers well here. And it would all start by challenging stereotypes and biases which sits across us or within the world, and challenge to make it more inclusive and for everyone. Last, I think design is also one of the really very effective tool. And I think if it's done right, design is activism, or let's say design is activism done right. Thank you very much, and thanks for having me here to share my thoughts today. Any questions?
Yeah, thank you so much, Kadambari, for uncovering all these aspects and pointers that we have in our day-to-day lives, which you're actually, facing. So that's really great to hear it from you. And we have a few questions for you that you would like to acknowledge here. So that is, first is, mixed media helps people to connect on another level.
Yeah.
That listening to someone's perspective, which is again a bias. So how can we spread this to a bigger audience according to you?
1 minute. Let me just look at that question first. What is the question? Mixed media helps people to connect on another level than listening to someone else's perspective, which is again a bias. Okay, so the person is saying that it is a bias that just listening to somebody would be a better thing, right? So how can we spread this to bigger audience?
Yes.
Okay, so basically the question is that mixed media is better than listening to somebody else's perspective. If I have got that correctly, uh, I think I think all different kind of media would have their own property. A famous statement in that particular context is message is the medium, or medium is the message. Sorry, just the opposite, right? I
Yeah.
think it is not about one media greater than the other, but it is about how you are using the qualities of media effectively to convey a certain perspective. Done right, it would really sort of struck a chord. If done wrong, it can be really bad. Even I have worked in a lot of media, and currently I'm actually experimenting with marketing and food as a medium to talk about some of the aspects, which is currently experimental. I've earlier done with sound and smells, but what you really need to understand is that, and of course, UX is another thing that we take. Think about it. Even if it is not mixed media, it's just our user experience, just our phone based devices. It is actually channelizing so much. It is actually creating a culture. It is setting behavior. It is changing people's
Right.
behavior, right? So all of
Right.
these are different sort of media, and there's nothing one against other, or one above other. It is about the use of the media, which can be taken to a certain level, best way possible. If you craft it, I think that would be good. How to take it to bigger audience is more in terms of, let's say, marketing. It's a question of how would you sort of take it there, right? But that's
Yeah, right.
different. So I would leave at that, that you would have to understand your media better, and then based on that you could go to spread the word.
Okay, okay. So, also, according to you, how do we recognize a design leader?
According to me, design leader comes in variety of ways, but I think the biggest thing that one should recognize, or there are different qualities of leaders, but one should be, it should not be for somebody's ego or power play. The role of
Right.
the leadership is about serving others. More often than not, it is about understanding and giving voice. It's about enabling others. It's about giving a vision. So the biggest quality, as much as it is there for a designer, is empathy. Similarly, for leader, it should be service to others.
Okay. Yeah, I
Mhm.
guess we're all done with the questions and pretty much answered to everyone's doubts. So, with that, thank you so much once again for a wonderful talk. Yeah. So, with that, welcoming our second speaker of the evening, that is Yessie. She holds over 17 years of experience in UI UX design, research, psychology, and her expertise lies into cognitive principles, scientific methodologies to assess human computer interaction. She's also the founder of Truly Happy DAO and has previously led research for eBay in multiple countries. Her career has spanned over diverse countries and including mobile, website, VR, AR, AI, ML, and wearables, London and Sydney, subway and autonomous vehicles. So she's pretty much talented, yeah. So over to you, Yassine.
some issue, but are you enjoying the talk so far? I know I am. And with the excitement building up, we have our next talk from Aishwarya Singh, who is currently working as a UX designer and researcher at Waycool Foods and Products Private Limited in Bangalore. She also facilitates crafting experiences that streamline businesses by working closely with users, product managers, and other designers. So join me in welcoming Aishwarya. Over to you.
Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a good day and enjoying the evening so far. I am Aishwarya. I'm a UX researcher and a designer. I work in a company called Wakefield Foods and Products. So, you might be hearing a lot about UX, UI, UX research, product design, and a lot of words here and there, and a lot about design. So, as a designer, we always like are learning in new skills to improve our craft, from learning the newest design tools or going to design talks, learning from trending about trending topics, learning tips and tricks. We spend a lot of time on it. So the one skill that we should practice more is listening, and that is what we're gonna talk about in my today's session. So just wait a second, let me share my screen. Listening, an underrated design skill. So, have you guys ever heard about active listening? So we always like learn new skill sets in design. For example, we'll be practicing different UI skills, learning about information architecture or user stories, making scenarios. So there are certain soft skills which is a major part of our learning UX design or getting into UX research or UI. So one of them is active listening. So what is active learning, and like how should we do it, and how should like have it in ourselves? So that is what we're gonna talk about today. Active listening is about focusing on the other person and not thinking about the thoughts, opinion, or ideas that pops into our head. So when active listening is useful, so active listening is useful in your research when you're going out and doing the user research, like or remotely, or ethnography studies or diary studies. Like if I talk about research, and when you are as a UX designer, you are talking to your stakeholders or working with your product managers, even with the when you are talking like discussing with your UI designers or the UI designers, like having your discussions with development team, or when you have your develop hands off. And apart from designs, like it is even helpful in your personal growth, like whereas your friendships, interviews, relationship, or wherever in general you are communicating with people. So how does it like active learning works or it is done? Like, I mean, so in today's like our day-to-day life, like we speak about someone else's experience through one's own perspective, because that's how one understands the experiences. However, it's dangerous to speak about someone else's experience through one's perspective as a UX designer, as one can overlook problem and fail to capture the overall experience of the user. As you can see here, like an example, like the first person is like, hey, I really have a cool idea. So as a designer or as a human being, like we should be, so if a second person comes or you come and say like, hey, that's cool, let me tell you about my idea. So rather, how about we say like, that's a really great idea. Tell me more about it. So that is something where we start developing empathy. So as a designers, we all might have heard about empathy is a buzzword, and it's gets through around a lot in digital design space. So, how we develop empathy. So we develop by learning, by really listening to the users and understanding what they are struggling with. Like UX designers can easily develop empathy for the users instead of just taking every word at fact value. Like without understanding the context and just going by what the user is saying. For example, uh, we are not developing empathy, we are not listening to our users. Like listening to a user is more than just asking them how they feel about the problem. For example, if you are going for a research, you will be not asking them like what problem they are facing in the problem. We will be asking lots of whys, what we will try to understand the current scenarios and then move ahead. So there we are trying to do active learning. So with empathy, we have to create a safe listening environment. Like we have to like feel confident in ourselves. We have to make sure the environment is safe when we are talking about it. Create a safe listening environment. So what does it create safe listening environment? Uh, so as a designer, you should be like focusing more on the speaker and giving them space to talk and learning and even giving ourselves like we should be more confident and make ourselves first comfortable when we go and try talking to them. For instance, like when I started doing the research, I was not that comfortable. Like for introverts, as I must say, like I used to be an introvert, so being a researcher and an introvert, so that was like a point where I had to like push myself. Like I have to make myself first comfortable so that I can talk to others and understand them. Because when we go out and do research or when we have to talk to stakeholders, we have to be comfortable in our own shoes. Then only we can uh, ask questions or understand and listens to them. Like then, so designing is never a black or white. It comes with a lot of ambiguity. Like we should be always asking relevant questions to understand the design brief, or communicating with users while conducting research, or coordinating with shared departments like the developers and PMs to execute the project successfully. And active listening and collaborating. So as we discussed how we should be doing that, so yeah, so there are certain steps we can follow, like make an eye contact, smile, or we can use gestures while we are interviewing, or ask them if they would like to have coffee, water, or tea. So actively listening diminishes the risk of our overlooking the user's problem. Like we pair with active observations, active listening can help us like, understand what the user is going through. Then we come mindfulness. So, what is mindful? Like mindful is like a power tool we can use whenever we want to reduce stress, bring attention and clarity to the present moment, and cut through the noise. We notice the distractions and sounds around us, but we are not distracted by them. Like mindfulness being aware and open to acceptance. We listen with empathy to our own thoughts and feelings without judgment. As a UX designer, it's important to foster a growth mindset. So, like, we are not in a competition with others, but rather ourselves. So we try to empathize deeper, listen stronger, design better, and be a better you every day. We should be accepting that there will always be feedback on our design and inputs. Maybe that some that makes you smile and some that makes you want to toss a table or quit and start a new life abroad. But like we should always be mindful and while we keep an open mind, we can be receptive toward potential solutions and alternative methods of addressing problems. So this is it. But before I end here, like we should always be keeping in mind, like listening is a skill that UX designers should have, especially now, with the rise of designing for social justice. As UX designers, being to design solutions uh, for users, it becomes especially important for us to listen to others and refer to their voice in order to avoid further invalidating their experience. Designers need to pay attention to the voice and perspective of the users and know what they don't know.
Thank you, Aishwarya. That was a very refreshing take on the subject for sure. So, with that, we are moving on to our last speaker for the evening, that is Sudebi. She is a transdisciplinary narrative designer, facilitator, a futurist, an educator, singer, also a faculty member in Srishti Manipal Institute of Art and Design and Technology, Bangalore. Her work focuses on embedding socio-political issues in schools and universities. She's also the co-founder of The Epicenter, a transdisciplinary design collective based in Bangalore. So over to you, Sudebi.
Thank you, Tanmay, and thanks for the opportunity to speak over here. I'll share my screen. So I thought that, after all these really powerful talks where everybody has been sharing their perspectives, and we didn't know what each one is going to talk about, but I can almost feel like there is a flow, very beautifully flowing from one to another. And I actually thought that rather than talking about any one particular experience of mine, because I wear many hats, I'm going to talk about certain key learnings that I've had in the last many years of my work, especially because I wear the hat of a design educator, I wear the hat of a designer, I wear the hat of a creative practitioner, and very often the personal and the professional sort of blend. So what are some of the learnings that I have had which I feel really can help both in somebody's practice as a designer and as a design educator, and even for people who are learning how to aspire to be practitioners. So I'll share my screen over here. Yeah. So I think in the many different things that I have done in my life with respect to design, the binder of all of those would be the act of facilitation. I mean, I very often use the term meta facilitation for myself, and people, in today's world, when you hear metaverse, they sort of might be wondering that is it about metaverse and facilitation of the metaverse? Not really. It's a term I coined to sort of make sense of what I do, and it's kind of difficult sometimes to explain to people what exactly I do. But I would say that meta facilitation, as I view it, is key to all my work. It's a deep, experiential, embodied process of self discovery and sense making for myself. And in that process, there definitely are dilemmas that you encounter. And then in the face of those dilemmas, one has to make choices. So how do I go about those dilemmas and how do I make those choices is something that I wanted to share with people. So I realized that as a transdisciplinary narrative designer, creative facilitator, storyteller, futurist, design educator, I facilitate processes and conversations enabling people to locate possibilities and design their own solutions. And through the last 16 years of my work across various parts of India, South Asia, Southeast Asia, UK, North America, and parts of Europe, with people from more than 30 countries, I would say, I've constantly been exploring socially, environmentally, and culturally relevant issues to design inclusive, equitable, fair, and regenerative possibilities. And I've really been fascinated about transformative and emergent forms of designing futures, futures of people, places, perceptions, paradigms, processes, and much more. And I would say that my current interest is looking into the future of freedom and future of fairness. And I really want to continue helping in the framing of a collective evolving vision and purpose driven design for the future of a world that cares. Now, in all of these different things that I have been trying to sort of um, explore, I realized that there is one thing, as I was saying, that facilitation is like that binder for anything that I have done. There is also another aspect which is integral to it, whether you do research, whether you do storytelling, whether you do any form of design, and that is collaboration, right? And it is actually, I would say, a coincidence that I think day before yesterday, was the UN's Day of Creativity and Innovation, and this year's theme is collaboration. Now, if you also see World Economic Forum's top skills, essential skills of 21st century and all, one of the top skills would be collaboration. And we all know that in the process of design, collaboration is absolutely a must. It's not something that can be done in isolation, right? Now, much like empathy is a buzzword, collaboration, I won't even call is a buzzword. It is something which is almost like a given, and it's very obvious. But possibly, I feel that most of us will agree that it's one of the most difficult things to do. So I therefore thought that there is really an art in collaboration. There is a design in collaboration, and what's also very important is there is a practice of that collaboration. And when I'm talking about collaboration, it could be collaborative design with respect to working with your colleagues. In a consultancy, when you're a student, you are working with other people, working in collaboration. But it is also about whether it's the process of research, when we are talking about designing for a particular user. Collaboration happens at every level, and one has to be mindful about that process. So how does one find the fuel to travel together? How does one make maps? When there is travel, when there is journey, when there is that navigation, there is also a map. And how do you sort of map that? So this is one of my favorite quotes I very often go back to for myself and for my students, and for my collaborators. Is this quote by Marcel Proust, which is that the real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. And I can't tell you how much I realize this to be true, and this to be so relevant in anything that I do. Because very often we are constantly sort of thinking that, oh, I have to find something new, I have to find something new in the research, I have to find something, and often when we're looking for something, that kind of becomes a bias in looking at what's right out there, what's really around us, kind of, you overlook that. And I've seen that sort of creates a lot of bias in our research, in our discovery, in our design. And like our earlier speakers were talking about cultural aspects of things and mindset, someone was talking about listening. I would actually say many of these things cumulatively create that voyage to be very interesting, in which one actually sort of finds a new pair of eyes to see the world with a new kind of lens. So I feel like the designer in today and for future is essentially a facilitator, not in terms of someone being in one room with a few people with some chart papers and sticky notes. I mean, that is a very stereotypical, I would say, image that many people have of a facilitator or even a designer, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about facilitation at a much larger level. I feel that, yes, we have spoken about designer as a thinker, as a doer, as a maker, and all of that. But I feel that you are an interweaver as a designer, and that interweaving sort of happens through the act of facilitation. So I sort of mulled over my own experiences and tried to sort of formulate certain questions, certain inquiries, which have led me to find my own directions. And I thought that I would share some of those inquiries with all of you. So one of the queries around the act of design as facilitation is that how can cross-cultural, transnational, systemic, and creative collaborations be facilitated among people from diverse contexts and disciplines, where the facilitator is from a different context as well. And I think this is something which, again, sounds obvious, but becomes one of the most challenging things, that if I'm a designer who's a facilitator and I'm actually doing research in a context which is quite different from my own, And even within that, I'm collaborating with different kinds of people, and there is so much diversity over there in those contexts. And so this can happen within one region, this can happen within one country, this can also happen across countries, right? So how can that be facilitated? Eliminating the biases, questioning our own assumptions, and being ethical and fair in that process. So, what really binds individuals from diverse socio-cultural, geopolitical, or economic contexts, and what acts as challenges in an increasingly interconnected world? We all know that the more the world is becoming interconnected in some way, the more it is becoming detached. I think that's a juxtaposition or a paradox of our times. Uh, so the question is, I think when I was talking about the dilemmas, it's a dilemma, but it's also a choice that we can make or we can exercise. That are we going to focus on the differences, or the differences can be looked upon as diversity, which actually is I would say, a creative fuel, for any creative practitioner? Or should we also look into what binds us, where in a context where things don't look like there is any commonality? Is it something which is worth finding out, that what is it that's binding all of us together? And when I'm saying all of us, I'm not again particularly talking about a client, a collaborator, or a user. I'm talking about very much the situation of a designer, any kind of designer that you are, or a design researcher within that, and sort of considering yourself as a part of this collaboration. How do seemingly unknown contexts unleash opportunities, not only to learn about another perspective, but one's own as well, while discovering invisible elements which connect and catalyze creative, ethical, and fair collaborations? I must say, one of the things that I've been very excited about in the last many years is that I was earlier very interested in fostering creative collaborations amongst people and communities where it wasn't very easy, and that is what really had driven me. I think more and more, while I was engaging in fostering and facilitating creative collaborations as a part of my design journey, I started being more aware of, are those collaborations, along with being creative and critical, ethical as well? And I would say that in the last 2 years of my life, I started thinking about how fair are these collaborations. And I feel that if we dig deeper, we would see that a lot of times in our own journeys as designers, design researchers, educators, there is a certain kind of privilege that we have. Sometimes we are not aware of. There is a certain kind of colonization that we exercise without knowing about it. And that kind of creates discrimination, that kinds of creates exploitative practices, I would say. And so therefore it's not just important to talk about creative collaborations and only be happy about saying, oh, we have co-created. It's not just enough to talk about participatory design, not just important to only talk about different kinds of methodologies, but being very clear about fairness in play. And as we kind of think about some of these elements, it's important to sort of think about not only how we are learning about others. I feel that I have learned so much about my own perspectives, things which are invisible about my own self. And I have discovered those in the process of my design journey. And I feel facilitation allows for that. So this is something that I have therefore, realized that I no longer say we are designing for someone. I would prefer saying designing with. And my journey actually has been about that. Trying to sort of think about how can you design with people, with communities, with whoever, and not for them, because the moment we say we are designing for someone, there is again a power play that sort of comes in, and it comes with a lot of baggage and biases. So, can facilitation again act as a bridge between two things? One is an egocentric, competitive, boxed, past, which is very much in silos. And on the other hand, an ecocentric, collaborative, interconnected, regenerative future, bringing seemingly different stakeholders together towards the well being of both people and the planet. I mean, we can't just talk about one. We have to think about both. I don't think it's something that we can afford to say, oh, this is what I want. It's no longer like a choice, it's a mandate, I feel. Right? So, but in creative and collaborative ways with a heightened sense of purpose. And I feel that's a question I ask myself whether I'm teaching a course or I'm engaging in a practice. Similarly, can we facilitate in order to foster collaborations with an approach of building anew rather than rebuilding the old? And I'm sure all of us, in some way or the other, at some point in our life, have been guilty of it, right? That although we are talking about doing something, we knowingly or unknowingly end up rebuilding the old. I'm not saying that we should throw away the old, but let's not fool ourselves by saying, oh, I'm building something new, when it is actually not new. There's no freshness to it. It's really heavy with the baggage of the past. So asking that question in collaborations is also very important to sort of understand. And then, can we co-sense our way into a complex future of constant living change? And I think this is very important. I think this constant living change, the recognition of this, of the ecosystems within which we exist and within which we design and within which we operate, I think creates a sense of humility within us, rather than thinking that, oh, I know it all or we know it all and we are here to do some good to people. That also gives some kind of ego boosting, right? But the recognition of change and uncertainty and ambiguity within that actually can create a sense of humility, which we can use by saying that, this is not something that can be sensed by one person or an individual. It needs to be co-sensed, in that collaboration. So how can we co-sense our way into a complex future of that constant living change? And I feel the active design, any part of the design and whatever kind of design we're talking about, should sort of question that. And I feel that if that's done, then we can walk towards what Rabindranath Tagore calls as creative unity and freedom, something that enables us to sort of walk towards that freedom. So questioning, therefore, how can collaborations be truly inclusive? Can they be healing? Can they be regenerative? Can they be emergent? And therefore, like I was explaining, that I have really shifted from only focusing on creative to inclusive. Then questioning inclusive itself, when you think about what is known as pluriversal design, it sort of talks about a world with many centers, and it questions the very term inclusion itself. Because again, when I say I want to include somebody with the best of my intention, that's also an exclusive process, because it allows me to be at a higher position to sort of say, I am here to decide who to include and whom not to. So moving from there to equitable and fairer kind of collaborations, and I feel that if that happens, at least that intention is there, collaborations can actually become very healing. I mean, most people will, possibly including myself, will talk about collaborations which have created a lot of angst and anxiety. I mean, collaborations are not easy, but there could also be collaborations which can heal, it can create some kind of collective healing. And how can that happen? And how can that be regenerative, so I feel, therefore, design to me is an act of metamorphosis, where the facilitation entails designing immersion, designing imagination, and designing impact. And I would say these three have been pivotal parts of my own work. And through that, some kind of metamorphosis can happen. Again, I don't think that this metamorphosis happens at an external level. I feel that it happens very much at an internal level. And for me, I'm more and more being aware and conscious about not only external context, but our internal context as well, within which we situate our work and our practice. So therefore, how can the journey of collaboration be transformative in nature, which transforms both the inside and the outside? So my insight has really been that collaboration is not a one-time event. It doesn't happen in just a boot camp in 2 hours with using some templates and filling up a form saying, oh, this is what we have done. It's a process, and it does take practice to do so, much like people practice drawing, sketching, learning how to code, and doing other processes. Collaboration is a practice. Can this practice be defined by the individual's experiential perspectives and lived narratives shaping who they are, rather than their backgrounds limiting them to what they do? And we see that all the times, right? That we are so colonized in some way in our minds of only textual knowledge or Eurocentric knowledge, or even to sort of say, oh, someone has a certain training or a background, and we limit an individual or a community with their limitless potential into those backgrounds that make sense to us. Instead, can we sort of focus on their experiential perspectives, their lived narratives, and that can sort of help us understand ourselves as well. And then collaborations, can they be seen as a way of collective, shared, and yet very personal sense making, which is driven by an inquiry towards which the collaborators journey together. So very often we will see that, I think it's very overrated that, oh, like-minded people come together. I mean, I think people in the world of design would say that when you are not like-minded, there are more chances that you are going to come up with something which is fascinating, which is awe-inspiring, right? And I'm saying that rather than going into the binary of like and dislike, good and bad, we're similar or dissimilar, if we sort of say that there is an inquiry towards which collaborators are uh, walking towards, instead of saying, oh, there is a project that we are interested in, or there's a theme that's bringing us together. So the inquiry has got nothing to do with right and wrong. It is an inquiry, which means it allows for more exploration. It allows for curiosity and discovery. And interestingly, the inquiry is never an absolute, but keeps getting reframed, making the whole act of collaboration one of a complex adaptive system in itself. Um, and in that, I always question, can individual uniqueness be retained in collaborations while transcending individual egocentric viewpoints? Because on one hand, people can become very egocentric. When you try to dissolve that, very often in the name of coming together, we see that there is a homogenization happening, right? When we are talking about democratizing a process, sometimes majoritarian voices are heard, some voices are never heard. So how can that uniqueness be retained, that individuality is celebrated, so that there is no uniformity and no homogenization happens, but at the same time it doesn't stay egocentric? So we can be equal in our humility and wonder of the uncertainty, the unpredictability, the ambiguity and novelty of the future, where we can perceive each other to be the same in terms of what we do not know. I feel that in the face of future, in front of future, we are all the same. The past is what really divides us, right? Because when we think about the past, each one of us have had a different past. In the future, because it is not yet there, we are all the same. We are all, I mean, I think equality and equity can be exercised more in terms of that, and hopefully that can dissolve the boundaries, the boxes, the chains, the constructed in the past in terms of what we know. So can collaborations be both critical and creative in nature? While we try to understand the science and logic of how to collaborate, can we also try to understand and master the art of collaboration? And can collaboration therefore be seen as a mosaic of many different subjectivities within an ecosystem, rather than a unifying neutrality, something that I was talking about, which dissolves all subjectivities in a uniform singular perspective, which is very, very problematic. We are seeing it all over the world, how plurality is not celebrated. There is this whole uniform like picture that we are trying to build in the name of unity, and that is really problematic, which is why I used the term creative unity earlier. Can we then allow the future to drive and guide us, where the path gets created by walking, and it's not a path which exists? You create the path by walking the path and navigating a landscape which does not have a map. Maybe in that learning journey, we can start valuing each other, and as we discover so much about each other and ourselves as well. And maybe we can visually map this journey as we imagine, envision, unlearn, and relearn. And my question to myself and to the others would be, can the visual harvest of this cartographic exercise help us navigate further? And how then do we co-imagine and co-build impactful systemic change initiatives as designers? How do we design innovation ecosystems for transformation? And are we fostering a sense of belonging so that everyone feels connected, supported, and respected? Is our initiative driven by the interdependency of well-being and well-doing? Something, when the pandemic had started, the World Economic Forum started talking about it, that it's not just important to talk about well-being, not enough, talking about well-doing. So both internally and externally. And I leave with a couple of quotes which I feel are thought-provoking, that if we bring our spiritual reserve to the fore, making it visible and giving it form and character, in the words of Ben Okri, the Nigerian poet and novelist, how does a culture withstand the onslaught of a pandemic? We survive, first of all, with the presence of culture within us. It's to our inner culture that we turn, the culture we carry in us through years of unconscious osmosis and conscious acquisition. And similarly, Linda Peterhans from World Economic Forum said, culture is the glue of society. It is what ties communities together, and its role is crucial in shaping social change in a constantly evolving world. And I feel that as designers, the act of facilitation actually explores this glue of the society, which is culture. It actually helps in withstanding the onslaught of not just this pandemic, but many more to come. Uh, Thanks for being patient and giving me an opportunity to talk about it over here.
Thank you so much, Sudebi, for this insightful talk that you gave this evening. You've left definitely like many questions for people in their minds to think about life again. Yeah. So moving on to audience's questions that they have for you.
Yeah.
So, what, according to you, are the issues that are underlying in the current situation or the current challenges, and how
I think
can we
there are many.
uncover that?
I think, like my previous speaker had talked about, I think it's very important. An important part of facilitation or collaboration is to listen. I feel that, and this listening is not just about listening to somebody else outside. I think we don't listen to ourselves. Most people know themselves the least, and I have often discovered it. I mean, I think I have the privilege to interact with young people all the time because I'm teaching them. So these 18 to 22 or 24-year-olds, when I interact with them, I see they have so much potential, but a lot of times they are so unaware of themselves. They don't understand what a treasure trove they are. So I think listening to ourselves, listening to the others, allow us to understand what's happening. And once that starts happening, you stop being anxious about what will happen because there's so much already to discover.
Yes, true. Yeah, that's like, and also like following with the second question, that is, what surprises you or what is more delighted to you throughout this journey of your design facilitator? Like,
I think every time I unlearn something, there is a different kind of joy. I feel that more than moments when I know, oh, I was right, I feel that the moments when I know that I was wrong, it really stays with me. And I have many instances where I would say that, if you notice, whether it's a conference or wherever, when people talk, they always talk about so called successes. Very often, do we talk about failures? I feel as designers, we should start actually writing more papers on our failures. We should start talking more about the failures, or whatever we thought as failures, and talk about the learning and unlearning from it. So for me, that's the biggest aha. I look forward to making mistakes, actually.
that's great. That's great, actually. So I guess we're all done. And thank you so much once again for your lovely talk.
Thank you.
With that, we would like to welcome Yessie again back after a small technical glitch. Uh, so Yessie, as told, she holds 17 years of experience in UI UX design, research, and psychology. Her expertise applies cognitive principles and scientific methodologies to assess human-computer interaction. She's the founder of Truly Happy DAO and has previously led research for eBay in multiple countries. Her career has spanned over diverse countries, including mobile websites, VR, AI, ML, wearables, London and Sydney subway, and autonomous vehicles. So we would like to invite Yessia over to you.
Everyone and welcome. So 2 or 3 years ago, when all the pandemic started, I was living in Europe and I was working for eBay, and they transferred me to Australia while I was managing a team in the UK and Italy and in Germany. So the time difference was very challenging. The Europe time 9 to 5 was my 7 p.m. to 2 a.m. and that time I was living on a boat. So I was enjoying the sunrise when I was waking up early. After that, I got used to sleep less, work more, and the body gets used to things. And then I thought that I still have Australian time to work, so I got an extra client, and I work 15, 16 hours a day, and I slept less than 6 hours, so I didn't have a lot of time for myself. But I didn't mind because all the lockdowns were happening at the time, so I set up my goals and I thought that if I work 2 years at this speed, then I will be able to retire earlier. And every time I was feeling a bit stressed, I didn't even want to think about it. So I started to work more and more, so I could have time to think about it and like how stressful the situation was, or what were my needs, or my boundaries, or my limits at that time. And after a while of this, what do you think happened? I had the biggest burnout ever. So I decided to stop. I decided to stop for a bit, and I started to doing some meditation, some yoga, breath work, and retreats. And I prioritize myself, and I take care of my mental health. And after that, I started working again because I couldn't stand like being without doing anything. But this time I'm doing it differently. I started setting a schedule and sticking to it. Something that helped me a lot was making a remote work schedule that has a start and an end time. And when I finish, I close my laptop and I start to enjoy my day with some activities, or I just rest. I've been with a morning routine, so that I start to work with the right mindset. I use a different software to manage my time and my personal activities. I start planning as well activities after work, so it balances my life. Then I have to set up a space at home, but that space is where I have my little office, which I just use when I'm working. Having a healthy diet as well, it helps a lot, and taking care of like your lunch, and I respect that time to have a break. I start going for walks, stretching, running. I'm doing some other activities that I love, but I never had time to do. And now the weekends are for me, and I start doing everything that I'm passionate about, which is traveling, going to the beach, spending time with my friends, go to my favorite restaurants. I'm also trying to connect with people that they are different, totally different from work, and on a different level as well. Not only talking about work, also foster new relationships while we're working from home, because being social is a very important need for every human. I also set some boundaries with my family and my friends, and I needed that very short time, like a couple of weeks doing some of this, to get used to this routine, and it reduced my stress rapidly. It boosted my productivity ×3, so I could concentrate more and focus into the important things, doing in a smart way every task in less time, but with higher quality results. So I was also feeling more motivated, more creative, and more in control, which makes me stay calmer and more relaxed as a result. So I highly recommend for everyone that is working from home to try some of these tips. Now, if you feel like you want to try something different, to get used to, and also to have a routine, and truly enjoy work and life at the same level, and decide what work-life balance means to you. Feel free to like experiment until you find that what works for you, your unique style of working and your circumstances. Maybe you have kids, maybe you have a family, maybe you live with more people, and yeah, for me it works a lot. So that was my experience through the lockdown, and now it's a lot more manageable. I have more time for myself, I have more time for my clients. And also talking about meetings increased rapidly, of course. It's like everything, it was about meetings. So the time that I had to do a task, the design, the UX, the research, it was very minimum. So if you have a good communication with your manager, and like open, honest, you can tell them there's a lot of meetings that are not necessary. So what about if I record this and I watch it later? Or let's take that time that we have to really make a difference. Like everything that my time, I'm gonna give it to you, or you give it to me. I'm gonna have an agenda before the meeting, and we're gonna go through all the points quickly in a speed, because I need to do my task. And also a lot of times it happened that I was doing some prototypes or design, and it takes your mindset needs to you work with different part of the brain when it's creative or when it's something that you need to just do it. So for me, it was very important to, when I had that creative time, I just booked myself meetings with myself, because I needed time with myself to create that prototype. And I was communicating with my boss, with my clients, with everyone, that this is time for design and this is time for any other task. So yeah, that was my experience. And yeah, at the moment I'm working with different clients around the world, and I set my schedule. Like, for me, it's very important what is my time, and I respect their time. And it works. It really works. I think when you get used to it, and when you do it more and more and more, you get better at doing that.
Thank you, Yessie, for that inspiring talk and for sharing your experiences. So, I don't think there were any questions, but I think your talk was pretty clear. Thanks again. It's now time for the much awaited panel discussion. The theme for our discussion today is work life balance. First, join me in welcoming Sudebi and Kadambari and Yessie again for the panel discussion. This topic will give them another chance to express themselves. So let's welcome them. Our panel moderator today is Mansi Salvi. Mansi's major focus has been idea definition, UI, usability, and visual rendering for projects spanning from desktop and web based enterprise solutions to mobile solutions and data visualization. She currently works at Nutanix in Bangalore as a senior design manager, having previously worked for Cisco and SAP Labs. Are you interested? I am. So let's go. The floor is yours now, ladies.
Thank you, Natalia. Thank you so much. Okay, so like she said, I have Yessie, Sudebi, and Kadambari. And today's panel discussion is about work-life balance in today's new normal, is what we call. And we're aware that working long hours can be harmful to us. It's not a new topic. We have been discussing about this for so many years. And many professionals struggle to maintain the balance due to various reasons. It could be habits, culture, expectations. Especially in this pandemic, it has been a struggle for us women and men to balance their work along with personal life. And it's, some people even call it work life integration, because it's one thing. But with pandemic, the boundaries got blurred. It's the same space where you spend time with your family and you also work. So not wasn't very common. So, what can we do to set the right patterns and reach a more sustainable, work-life balance, especially in this hybrid and remote work life, which is going to be our new normal, and we all are going to start with this, you know, with this whole new way of working. So my first question to all you ladies is, what are the new challenges that you faced while, we are all working from home, and how did you manage it? Is it possible to really have that balance? Did you really have it? So to answer that question, first, I would really like to ask Yessie, you being a consultant to so many big companies, how did you manage working from home with clients? I think you did cater to some of this question, but really like to hear it again. How you separated your personal time from client meetings, which would have increased a lot in pandemic, and how did you manage different client needs and to your needs at the same time?
Having like very clear goals
Yessie?
of
Yeah, you can hear
yeah,
you.
yeah. So yeah, having some boundaries, some limits, some rules for yourself, and prioritizing both of them is like, okay, the day has 24 hours, so if I work 8 hours, I need the same time for my life or less. But having some limits and some rules is like very important, and respect them. Like sometimes clients are very demanding, and of course they want more time, or this is for yesterday, so can you do this, or things like that. So at the end of the day, you need to think about yourself, because otherwise you're not going to be long uh, time with the client, because they're going to burn out.
True.
And it's a lot of times you don't even realize what is a burnout. I didn't even know what was it, like how the people feel, or what are the symptoms, or how. I'm a psychologist, so for me it was like, okay, well, I need to learn things that I didn't even know and experience all these things. Yeah, for me it's like just setting up rules and goals, very very important.
Yeah.
And
That's a
I
very good
think
point.
women as well, I don't know, I didn't know how to say no to clients, so I was like, yeah, yeah, I do this for you. And I think, I don't know, it's like they don't take advantage of us, of course, but I think men generally, they are like more like strict with that. They're like, no, I don't have time, I'm done. And we are like, okay, yeah, it's okay, I will do this for you. And yeah, so sometimes like learning how to say no, and just respecting yourself.
Yeah, that's a way we should start saying no. So yeah, no should be more than yes. But anyways, so next, I really want Sudebi, someone who's wearing multiple hats, a design educator, also a design practitioner, working globally. You need to evolve with time and tech. What has been your struggles? How did you manage so many kinds of work that you are engaged in globally through remote modes and take care of your personal life?
Yeah, I think I was laughing when we chose this panel discussion topic, just giving you a glimpse of my day to day. Although it's a Saturday, I do work on Saturdays. Throughout the day, I was actually I was in meetings and talking to my students and all of that. Right after that, I have been leading a hackathon in Nigeria for a community that I belong to. It's called Unleash. So I'm doing that, and obviously the time zone is different over there. I started after finishing my work at the university, and in the middle of that hack, when they're having their lunch break and something that's going on in a breakout room, I am in this talk. I will go back to the hackathon, and I have something else to do at night. And then I'm also someone who loves to do a lot of other things as well. So I feel like so I don't even know whether I should be the one talking about balance in that way, but I have to say one thing, that I totally enjoy what I do, and I feel that really comes from how I define work. I feel that a lot of times I've seen in people, whether they're students or even my colleagues, uh, when you think of something as a work, and I mean, however you define it as work, it sometimes becomes chore. Even thinking about it is like, oh, I'm spending time thinking about it. I think it happens to all of us. Whereas when you feel like you're deriving energy from something, it stops bothering you so much. And I think that's one of the things which has really acted in my favor all my life. And I think I'm one of those people who, I mean, I'm a foodie, and I feel I love giving metaphors of food. So, being an Indian, you would always have multi-course meals. You would never be happy with just one thing, right? And the thing is that when you're cooking, you don't start making, say, a rice and a chapati, then you make something, then you do something. I mean, it's an act of multitasking and planning in advance so that you get that wholesome meal. You have multiple things on your plate, and you're getting that nutrition. And for me, that's how I look at it. My work as a practitioner directly feeds into the work that I do as an educator. The work that I do as an educator, and I mean, I'm glad that I work at Srishti, because it's a really interesting space where I can experiment a lot. The learnings that I find over there, the gaps that I find while teaching, I sort of try and use that in my own practice. And so the epicenter and Srishti, I mean, I feel like I don't exist without the two. And when I feel that things are becoming too much, which happens, and also as an empath who listens to a lot of people, I do get bogged down when I hear about other people's misery. I mean, whether it's students or clients and colleagues, and I also find it hard to say no. So yes, learning to say no is there, but I also find my own ways to find that relaxation. And I feel what has happened well for me is not following a formula. Some people will give you like some kind of a thing that, okay, do this, this works. I don't think any formula works for relaxation. I mean, on one hand, I do a lot of intellectual stuff, but one of my relaxations is to watch the really nonsensical Bollywood movies which make no sense, and I would make time for it just to laugh at the stupidity of it, right? And that really makes me good, makes me feel good. Or I will have something like not so healthy to eat. I know it's not a good thing to say, but yeah, I mean, I find my own pleasures. I mean, sometimes I just go on a drive and just look into the nothingness, and that gives me some kind of relaxation. So yes, uh, find your own moments of how to balance it, I would say.
Yeah, that's true, because I think, you need to have a, like I said, the pattern is for us what works for us. And if you're happy, that's important. So yeah, thank you, Sudevi. So Kadambari, for you, like you lead a design team of 50 plus designers, I think much more. With remote working, I'm sure your meetings have increased to make sure you cater to every employee's needs and to make sure they're sane. But with all this, how did you manage to keep yourself safe?
So, so there's a little difference in terms of just remote and also with this pandemic. Earlier
Yeah.
also we had worked remote, right? Because we are doing consulting for North America and Europe. Majority of our clients come from there. So many a times we would travel, do some sort of workshop, come back, but majority of the other part of the work would still be remote. But here was a shift when pandemic happened, because and the other thing is, because we are in digital business, it never went down. In fact, it went up. So there's a lot of more work that is coming up. We're still getting to this new problem, which is not really remote, but that of people falling sick. And then at one point of time, 50% of the team was down due to COVID, either directly or indirectly affected. Many of my colleagues actually lost their parents as well in that, and had to suffer a lot of different issues. So I would say, see, working remote was still okay. Um, Even the size chunk of what meetings would be would have gone up, and that was not a problem. What really was a problem and was causing a lot of issues was just how Sudevi told, how being like an empath, you as a creative person, you will end up absorbing a lot of these things. Some of the things that kept me sane was first my team itself. Being an extrovert, being a person who loves social connection, um, my team and anyways we host a lot of things together. So because of that, we were always in connection, of doing a lot of things at the same point of time, because it's a design team after all. Everybody felt the similar sort of ways. When half of the team was down, the other half took that challenge to make sure that people who are either visiting their folks in the hospital, or if a person's parents are there in ventilator, we are not disturbing them. Thankfully, our processes were always rigorous in terms of, we always thought, so we had this very interesting notion when we started. We said that in many of the creative industries, the famous dialogue is, when was the deadline, and they say yesterday. But we are not going to do
Yeah.
that. We are going to be the person who would, people who will create change. And because this was a new team forming 3 years back, 4 years back now, we thought that we would create few changes together. And that's why our processes were very streamlined. We said that if somebody falls sick tomorrow, we would never call them. Instead, we would know where to take up the files and go about it. So there was this whole system which was there not to overwork per se. So that held, those kind of good things that we do, um, that helped us to sort of look at the business. But that's just the business part where the support came in. The other part, which was more in terms of making sure that talking and making sure that team members are good. Thankfully, Valley Labs had a very good support system in terms of supplying all of that aids and things that how we could enable. But the other part was really about managing your own self, because you are going to be affected by these thoughts. How can you not be affected if you love your colleagues so much and they are going through
True.
these kind of problems? My simple solution was to look at philosophy. So two, three things I did which helped me, which have always helped me stay sane, even in my personal life when I have faced issues. Um, One is accepting. As the Stoics say, first accept, what's happening, and accept your own boundaries, accept what as a person you can be. The second was not imagining troubles, or not imagining a way which was going bad in the name of strategy, or how would I overcome a certain problem. I would take days as they would come, and I knew, and I had strength I knew that I have strength to deal with whatever would be thrown at me. So those kind of first, sort of thoughts and affirmations that I had was very strong in terms of keeping me sane, in terms of knowing that where we are and what we can do, what is my boundary in terms of how much and what can I do. The other thing is art, creativity, and these kind of activities. I love exploring things. So part of the other team of mine, like actually a subset, we do a lot of things. One is design inspired, which was more towards designing equitable futures. How do we bring in education as a tool for change and things like that. So that's one part. But apart from that, I was really designing. It's more of a play though. It's not commercial at all. We were looking at how to create letter in the form of panipuri or emotions of panipuri. Like how would you understand a certain yeah? So these kind of like really experimental things were going on during these pandemic, which would always sort of, or questions like, can I uh, we know that the way sound can be sort of can be created in your mind. When you think about something, you smell can't be. So we had another project where we were exploring how just that can be done. The impossibility of creating that experience so strong that somehow memory fools you to create a smell. So these kind of creative questions kept me engaging, not to think the difficulties of life which pandemic was throwing, and the kind of emotional. So first understanding, and then having just fun with friends. That's kept me sane.
Wow. I'm very interested to know about a Pani Puri experiment, but maybe we can take that some other time. But yeah, I completely agree to your point of expectations. Like for me, I think it was a little different story. And this work life thing came because it impacted, like, more in the pandemic. I absolutely agree. We always had that remote working, but there was a space for work and there was a space for your, family or your personal time. And that really mixed for me. I mean, then my son was like 2.5. Didn't it was a hit. I mean, for me it was a big hit, like now my space is home, working, everything. For a kid it's more about looking at a mother very happy 24/7. But how do you separate that, it was a struggle, and I had a lot of colleagues along with me who were like, how you work, how am I going to work with my daughter or with my son? And they want me to play with them because they see me. Before that it was a day careful day. They would go to daycare, they know their moms and dads are in office, they will come back and they'll play with us. But that whole struggle for 2 months, when and you also have to take care of all your house things, it was a shock. Not easy. A lot of negative thoughts, very emotional for me, if I have to talk personally. And I think one point also where, you have to go through it, what is really important. So your expectations that, yes, I love my family, I love my work. And I think pandemic helped to realize how life is integrated together. And when you have to have that balance, I don't even think we ever have that balance. I don't even think I have a balance today. It's about having good days and bad days, and you have to expect that there are going to be bad days. But if you have 3 good days, it's a good week. and you have to motivate yourself. The motivation is about, I'm going to do these three things at work. My goals are very less, because when you expect less and you do it, you feel good. Because otherwise, if you have 10 things that you decide to do and you're able to do only two, you do feel unsatisfied at the end of the day. So I think having those expectations clear, set your priorities. I think Yessie really said nicely in her talk, have prioritize your work, plan ahead. I remember I used to plan with my husband, like, you take these three meetings, tell me what are your main meetings. I'm not going to set, my important meetings at that time, so that we can lock ourselves and someone is there with the kid. So we plan our whole week's meeting for the whole 2 years of pandemic. So that we can maintain both, because when you don't have support, you have to be together in the boat, sailing together. And so yeah, I mean, I really believe there's no balance. You just have to create a pattern around your life that is working for you, and motivate yourself, because that is what will keep you going in your work. Because if you're happy at your work, you're happy in your personal life. You're happy in your personal life, you're going to happy at work. It's so integrated together. So yeah, I mean, very good points. Thank you so much. I do have one more question.
I would
Yes,
want to
Kadambari, I can see.
I would want to contradict that a little bit somewhere with my
Sure.
own lived experience. So during my post graduation, it was like a lot tougher in new media design, where we were, almost working, I don't know, 20 hours or 22 hours,
Yeah.
sleeping 2 hours, 3 hours at times.
Or
At
maybe
that
we
point of
don't
time,
sleep also at
yeah,
times.
right. So those were
Yeah.
some of the things which were there. Would you say I was happy? I was. I was extremely happy doing that. I did it for quite a long time. Never had so much of intellectual stimulation in my life before that,
True.
and I was enjoying it
True.
so much. But that ended up creating some sort of problems later on in the health,
Yeah.
space. And there was obesity, and there was like a lot of other issues that led. And then I had to
Yes.
consult a doctor. While I was very happy intellectually, and the life was good, and I would eat and do everything that I like, want to, didn't do everything what I want to, because of course you're working 20 hours, at that point of time.
Right.
But it impacted health. So while there's happiness and things like that, what Yessie did talk about, having that set boundaries are so important at times. um,
Yes.
uh, I know it, and knowledge is not experience. So that's why that has again come back to me in a form. A few years back again, when I like, and doctor asked me, so what do you do for a living? I said, I design. And then he said, what do you do for fun? Or, what are your hobbies? I said, design. And he was not very happy, listening to that answer.
Yeah.
He told me the kind of stress you're taking is actually affecting your body. I said, I don't even have a stress. But he said, so, these are some of the points which I thought, which led to a deeper sort of thought processes as to there would be a place. I would not. It's not for me to say in whose life where the balance should be, but I think it will take a toll. We would know, we would not know, but I think there has to be
Right.
some space you have to create for physical exercise. At least I would say. In my case, my problem is this beautiful, amazing chair that I like to
Share.
sit. Yeah, and talk to
Yeah.
people and love, finding those kind
True.
of the stimulations that we have. Yeah.
I
No,
think I
it's
think
a
it's
good
a
point, because see, balance, you definitely need to have boundaries. Like in my case, my boundary was 5:30, no calls. Any calls after 8:30, because that is 2 hours that I spend with my son. And there's some time that I give for myself, and I tell my son, you're not going to come there. That's my time. Even he knows that. But definitely this pandemic didn't allow me to say that I couldn't tell him 10 to 5:30 is only work hours.
Yeah.
That mix has to be there between, because I mean, it's not fair. I mean, you can't expect a 3-year-old to know that 10 to 5:30 mom has meetings. No. He did evolve. I evolved. My husband evolved, because he does understand that there are few meetings where I'm not allowed to disturb her. But there are few meetings where she will listen and she'll play with me at the same time. So I've become a master of multitask. Pandemic has really taught me. So yes, it's very important for boundaries. And that's what keeps me sane, to have me time, that multiple small pockets, like exercise.
Yeah.
But
I struggle. I understand. I struggle.
I also
Yes,
feel
Sudevi, I
one,
know you want
yeah.
to add a point.
No, yeah. So basically, I was saying that I'm also connecting to what Kadambari earlier spoke about acceptance, because I feel one of the things that has happened, especially during the pandemic. I mean, we all know. I think it's kind of intergenerationally ingrained in women
Yeah.
across any culture that you multitask. And most of the times you don't even realize that you multitask. You are born that way. You grow up that way, right? So. And I feel that that in a way takes a toll in any way. I mean, whether there is a pandemic or not, you do that, and no matter how progressive you are, no matter how progressive your ecosystem is, you end up being that way. But I also feel that when you had something like the pandemic, it also taught us a lot, where you know when we talk about boundaries, I mean, of course, in an ideal situation, all of us would like to have one, right? I mean, who would not want it? But when you have a situation where there is no way in which you can do that, everything is seeming to be out of control,
Mixed.
that can create a lot of anxiety. I mean, I know of people who want to have some kind of control, and the fact that they cannot have this. I mean, for example, I mean, I used to travel a lot before the pandemic, uh, across India, across the globe. Now I know for a fact that at least the travel time that I would have, those would be the little pockets when you can at least relax, you can think, you can do something, you can have a cup of coffee or a meal or a walk somewhere. And that's not happening, right? I mean, now you're working across time zones, so you're 24/7 available. The other thing which I've seen as a very funny thing is that why I'm saying that one should figure out their own boundaries, and one should I mean, there is no cookie cutter way to sort of say this is the way to go about it, because it can create more stress. Is because
Yeah.
I have seen often, let's say I'm talking to you, Mansi, and you will be telling me that Sudebi, you should have a balance and you should be doing it, right? But when it comes to you working
It's
with me,
hard.
you want all my attention and time. So it is almost like, oh, when you're working with
Yeah.
Kadambari, then you exercise these boundaries. When you're working with me, I want the whole of you and all of you. I mean, they're not happy working with, say, a
Yeah.
team member of mine. They want all of me. And if that happens to 10 people or 20 people, then it starts becoming too much. So that's why I felt that, like I was giving the metaphor of cooking, that cooking, I feel, is an art, it's a science, it's so much that if you have things ready, you know how to sort of work around it. It's the actual cooking process is not so much as the thinking, preparing, and figuring things out. And also playfulness within that can help you in not feeling so bothered about it. So one of the things that I feel is that I think we need to redefine what is acceptable for us and the others. I know for a fact, I'm sure all of you have had that experience. Everybody's expectation is that when you are on a meeting, all of your videos should be sort of on. I feel there's no reason for all the videos to be on. You don't need to be sitting in one place, and it doesn't mean that this is the only way I can visibly show that I'm giving you attention. I can actually be walking and maybe cooking or doing exercising and not have the video on, and I can relax. Maybe I can lie down, I can still be engaged. But I have seen that for most
Yeah.
people, these are not acceptable practice. If we are okay with some of these and have a shared understanding of what are the measures of visible engagement, then I feel that a lot of stresses and a lot of problems actually can be addressed. I keep doing that. I mean,
Yeah.
in my class, a lot of times nobody turns on the camera. That doesn't mean the students are not engaged. They're very engaged, and they know that the engagement is the more important thing than sitting in front of the camera while you can have five other screens on. I mean, how do I really know? So trust is really, really important over there. And I feel if we're talking about the new normals, these are the new normals that we should figure out than going with what
Yeah.
others are talking about. I mean, how do you consider well-being? How are you okay with taking into consideration that you may not be having that little time where you would be grabbing a coffee or meeting another colleague somewhere and maybe just doing something else. So yeah.
Yeah, I think the expectation, I completely agree. I mean, I do take still, when I'm making my parathas, I do take my calls. And the other person, I tell that this is this time. If you're okay, I'm going to do, because it's a internal discussion. It's a conversations. I can always do that. I said, I'm still going to be listening. Another person absolutely respects that, because they do want to, discuss something. And they're like, hey, please go ahead. We all have gone through it. So it's more about communication, like I think someone did mention, communicate, let the other person know, and if they are fine with it, go ahead. Because or then you wait, you say, okay, I'm not going to do it today, this is the only time I have. So yes, I think it's important, like expectations, boundaries, And again, to your point, so they be like, and that's why I said there are days which are not. If you expect that all 5 days are not going to be perfect, there will be a day or two which you are, how much ever you plan, it's just going to not going to work. It won't be worse, because I know, I tell myself it's okay. Today is just one of the day went bad. You knew it. It's going to be, not all 5 days are perfect. So yeah. So with that, let's move on to, well, we all have struggled. We all are still struggling in some ways. So is it important to discuss, all our problems with our peers, our managers, to be, if that's one person that we discuss everything, but there are still things that we don't. And will it impact our performance? I think that's one question we always have. If I talk about this anyway, will it impact my performance, my raise, kind of work that we have on our table? Will that be taken away? So, or will they judge us? How do you handle this? So for this, I'll begin with Kadambari. You're a leader, so everyone is looking, at you for that help. So, but when you need that support, what do you do?
I'm quite authentic and very vocal about problems in my own life. So and that's what we wanted to create. Like 4 years back, when we wanted to create a team, we didn't wanted to create a false pretense as to who we are. And authenticity was one thing that we really liked. So for me, if I am feeling down, I think my team would know. And similarly, what you talked about, would people judge me and things like that. I think that vulnerability is something that we all accepted. So each year we have these common sort of workshop that we do for ourselves, and in that workshop we try to understand that what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, and what we want to bring in as a culture for the team. So thankfully, these are some of the one of the few ways where we said that we would be able to, first of all, we'll respect each other, but we'll also respect our experiences and what it comes with. So that's one great relief, that I don't have to wear a strength, sort of a face all the time, armor. And I also don't have like much sort of a, I would say, if I am feeling down, even if it is my boss, I would let them know. In fact, in my life, I've been now in 5 years long distance relationship. That's totally known in my organization. In fact, 2 years back, when the pandemic was going to hit, because of the whole personal situation itself, I was going to relocate to US at that point of time. So it is all known. So it's not like, of course, your personal thoughts are personal thoughts, but it is not that much. As a team, we are community. So that's one place that we have where we find our support in each one of us. So it's that kind of a very close knit community that we have created, in even the office space. Because we said that we are going to be community. We are not going to be family. We are not going to be give things, but we are going to be a community of people who are intellectual, empathetic, and sensitive. So that really helps. But apart from that, also art helps. Drawing, painting helps. Poetry helps. Reading helps. Your My dog helps. Just cuddling helps. Talking to general friends help. So these are some of the support, if it comes to emotional sort of ways. If you're looking at more professional sort of ways, that how do I understand that what is my next way, or how do I expand my horizons. So for that also, I like to have, like, being an extrovert, I'm very much connected, and I like to connect with different people, like to have their different perspectives and thoughts as to how things are. So Design Leadership Forum was one place that was really a good safe space where leaders could ask a lot of questions, specifically design leaders. So that is one place. I travel to conferences and things like that. So that's another thing where I discuss a lot of it. Thankfully, the world is much open place today. Reading, and people sharing their experiences openly has helped me in terms of how I look at my own career and how do I want, where I want to, sort of progress, where I want to do process innovations and things like that. So all of these has helped me and supported me. Apart from this, Stoic philosophy is one strong, place where I look at as to how to deal with things in life. So these are some of the things that support me.
Great. Thank you, Kadambari. Thank you so much. So, okay. So Devi, how did you manage when you really needed help? I mean, you're a teacher. You do your, design career you have. So I know you love having everything, but still, I mean, like you said, there are times when you do need emotional help. And how did you go about it, managing that?
I think as a person, I mean, I'm a good conversationalist, but I think I'm more of an introvert when it comes to something that's happening in my own life. However, I think I don't shy away from talking about it if there is a space like that. And what I mean by that is, I think something that Kadambari was mentioning, I'd like to kind of continue on that note. I feel that as we grow up, men, women, all of us, somewhere we kind of learn that you cannot show people that you are vulnerable, because vulnerability is a sign of weakness. That's what you kind of learn. Whereas I feel it takes extreme courage and strength to show that you are vulnerable. And trust me, it happens a lot when it comes to teaching. You feel like as a teacher, as an educator, you don't want to show your students that you're vulnerable, because almost like there is a power balance that's just going to go off. I've never believed in it. In fact, I mean, not only during the pandemic, even earlier, many of my students have said that the very reason that they could connect to me and they always keep in touch with me for many, many years is that they feel that I'm absolutely okay to show my vulnerability to them. I mean, I don't think I have any problem saying that, say I don't know about something. I feel the pandemic actually showed us that there were lots of places where we were quite the same, like with respect to technology, with respect to problems, with respect to blurring of these spaces, personal problems, grief, all lot of these things, and I feel the way to go about that is to foster kindness towards yourself and show kindness to others. So how do you maintain a balance between being kind, being empathetic, having compassion, and also being honest, and also being responsible? So I feel that when you are honest and open about sharing about your vulnerabilities, if there is something like that, people actually reciprocate. I mean, it's not about support. So it's not really sort of going somewhere and talking about something as a problem. So I don't think of it as that. I mean, like I was talking in my talk, I mean, for me, life is full of dilemmas and choices. So you have dilemmas, and if you talk about those dilemmas very often, just in having conversations with people, even people who are much younger than I am, with my students, I've seen more than people who are, say, I can look up to. I have actually found my own path in those conversations. So it is not someone is giving me gyan, or someone is giving me lecture on what is to be done. It doesn't work for me. I feel it doesn't work for almost anybody. In fact, sometimes when you are too stressed, most people, when you try to share with them with the best of their intention, the first thing that they do is they feel like there is a huge responsibility that they have to offer you some solution. And actually that is what's going to create the stress. You are sharing because you just want to share. You just want them to hold that space, and have that psychological safety in that space. That's all that you are looking for. And the moment they start saying things like, so to give an example, if I'm working 20 hours a day, I think I know as a person that I should probably be exercising and doing something. I know what it's doing to my health. When I'm sharing it with somebody, I'm actually looking for emotional support. If that person then says, oh, you should now start saying no, you should start saying, okay, I will not do it, take your time, do this, do that. And I know practically it's not possible in that moment. It's just making me remind of my misery even more, right? So I feel like, again, there is no formula. Whatever works for you. For some people, when you talk, it works. For some people, just listening to music, taking a long walk, or taking a shower, looking at the sky, it just works. And I feel like no matter how silly it may sound to somebody else, you should actually be okay to sort of say, well, this works for me, this is my support. It could be even to like 2 hours of writing some poetry. So I feel like when you have, like Kadambar, you were talking about philosophy, each one of us have our own reservoirs of resilience, I feel, which very often we don't, we kind of undermine. So we are looking for someone else to come and tell us something, reading a self-help book and all. It can just be even a James Bond movie that, where you might find something and you will never think that that's something that you will be looking for in order to get guidance. But maybe that's what's going to open up something. So being open to listen to your own self, thinking that it's fine, that every day is not the same. I don't always have to have a deadline. I don't always have to be successful. I am also okay to kind of fail. I don't have to be this epitome of perfection, because I feel that creates a lot of trouble and everything. So once we deal with that and we are okay talking about it, it's very important. I mean, it happens a lot of times, right? People who are perfectionists, and even I think as creative practitioners, this is something I've noticed that, while you are working on something creative, even if you have 7 days to work on it, it is not like after all the planning that day one you're creative, day two you're doing this, day three. It can happen that you get that aha moment of creative something on the sixth day. And sometimes people don't understand. They think that, oh, the first 5 days you have just wasted. But actually, that's a moment of churning. There is some process of assimilation that's happening within you. It's some kind of a synthesis that's happening. And in that one moment of aha, maybe things will just change and you will be coming up with something amazing. And I feel you need to be open about that creative process that you follow or that happens within you. Tell people that you have to trust me, you have to trust yourself rather than falling prey into other people's demands of what is so-called productivity, how you can visibly show efficiency and all. And be open about it, because sometimes people don't communicate, right? I mean, you're having a creative block, something is happening at home and you feel like, oh, people are going to think I'm unprofessional. So rather than that, if you talk about it and say, I have this problem and this might happen, and as a human being there can be mistake, there can be days when I'm not the best, but so what? So I feel like, all many of us here, or rather all of us here, we deal with human centered design in some way or the other. One thing that I find a miss a lot of times in our own ways of being and doing things is the human part of human centered design often goes amiss, if you notice. It becomes so much more that than human. And I feel, let's be more human towards ourselves, towards each other, and that way we can figure out how the support works in that moment.
Very nicely said, Sudebi. Thank you. Yessie, what are your views? Yessie, okay. We can't. I think you're on mute, Yessie. Okay, so but let me just collate what Kadambari and Sudebi said. I think very good points you both have brought. Talk about your vulnerabilities. I think it's very, very important. Not very easy for I think for many of us as well. But I think it's just being put into practice. It helps you. I think so. Everyone should do that. I agree. And communication. Because as long as you communicate, I come in an organization which has hierarchies. And you always feel that, what if I do, then what? I think you don't have to worry about then what, because I think everyone has, at some point of time, there is a phase where you need that. And I always think you need to take a break. Like, I think Yessie brought a point where she said, enough, I want to take a break. I want to go for a yoga retreat and want to travel. It's good to take a break than to go about just stressing yourself, working for long hours, because productivity just goes low and low and low. So first, communicate to whoever so. Tell them that I need this break. It's okay to have a 2 weeks break. I mean, 365 days and you're taking 2 weeks break. It's fine, So I think these 2 points are so connected. I'm taking a break to what Yessie was talking about in her talk. I think it's all connected, and beautifully we can put this into practice. And I think we can have better, life along with our work and with our personal side as well. And so thank you so much. It was great. Kadambari, Sudebi, and Yessie. I think she's having some
Thank
technical
you.
glitch, but it was lovely to hear your talks, and it was a lovely talking to all of you. Thank you. And Tanmay or Natalia, all over to you.
So, with that, well, ladies and gentlemen, this wraps up our session for today for Women in Design 2022. On behalf of the UMO Design Foundation, I thank you all for making time to join us here today. It's been a pleasure to host this event and hope to see you all again next weekend. Thank you.